We love talking 76ers basketball here on Philly Pressbox Radio, and we love having newcomers join us, and we got the best of both worlds right here. Visiting with us for the very first time, new to this year's Sixers beat at the Inquirer and Daily News, it is Gina Mizell. Gina, how are you?
I am great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. So glad you're able to do this. For full disclosure, we are talking Tuesday afternoon, so a day before the Sixers Wednesday night game. And before we talk basketball, let's talk a little bit about you, Gina. For people who don't know your story, you are new to Philly as of a couple of months ago, and you spent most of your previous time, I believe, on the western side of the country. So tell us about your journey, where you've been, and how you ended up in Philadelphia.
Yeah. New to Philadelphia and have been loving my time here so far, both from a professional level. This is obviously a very interesting team to be covering right now, and on a personal level as well. But yeah, I've been a beat writer for about 10 years now, over 10 years actually. And like you mentioned, mostly been on the western part of the country. I grew up in Phoenix and actually was living and working there for about 3 years prior to moving to Philly. But before that, I'd been in Denver covering the Nuggets, was in Portland covering college football, also covering college football in Oklahoma, and had, a stop in small town Beaumont, Texas along the way as well. So yeah, I've kind of, this industry takes you to a lot of really cool places. And, Philly is a spot that I'm really, really excited to be in, just because of the passion of this fan base, being, in an East Coast media market, and obviously covering a very, very interesting team and on a great Inquirer staff that has gone under kind of a revamp over the past several months. And so I'm really excited to be a part of that and to be diving into this season.
Yep. Okay, so you get to Philly, and the major story, as soon as you arrive and ever since, and still a big story, of course, is the Ben Simmons mess. It was really crazy the week right before the season started, as you're well aware. What's it been like for you and your colleague, our pal Keith Pompey, covering all of that?
Yeah, obviously it's very interesting to be dropped into arguably the biggest story in the NBA and one of the biggest stories in sports. And like you mentioned, it got particularly hectic when Simmons arrived back in Philadelphia and took his COVID tests, and then was, in protocols for a few days, and then came back to practice, was kicked out of a practice, suspended for the opener, then comes and addresses the team and says he's not mentally ready to play. And then the last couple of days, we've gotten little snippets of him, whether it was, on an exercise pick after a shoot around, or, just kind of seeing him with player development coaches with a basketball in his hand. And so there's still a lot of uncertainty as far as just, when he's going to return, if he's going to return. But, he has been at least with the team in some capacity when they've been at home. So yeah, it's going to be a story until there's some sort of resolution, whether it's that he returns to the court, gets traded. It's kind of this limbo situation right now, which again is very interesting to sort of try to track day to day.
What's your best guess? Is he going to actually play a game with the Sixers, or is he not? Is he going to be traded in the next month or two, or what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, it's really tough to know. And then that's when I'll be candid and say, I don't know Ben Simmons. Like, personally, we've never had a chance to have a conversation. And so it's hard for me as someone who's new to get a read on what he's thinking. My colleague that you mentioned, Keith Pompey, has done some incredible reporting on this, just kind of how we got to this point and sort of covering the day-to-day stuff with him. But the date I would keep an eye on is December 15th, because that is the day that players that signed a free agent contract this past summer are able to be traded. They cannot be traded right now, but they can be traded on December 15th. So that would just open up the pool of players available a little bit more. So whether you're doing a direct trade, whether you're trying to do a three-way trade, it just opens up more options for Daryl Morey. But as far as what happens in the meantime, between then or between now and the trade deadline, or whatever kind of benchmark you want to put on it, I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting because players and Doc Rivers, like, they're acting like, we would, if he's ready to come back, we would bring him back onto the team. But also at the same time, they're sort of operating under the assumption or under the reality that he's not here right now. So they have to figure out how to win games without him, while also knowing that he could come back. And so, like I said, it's just this weird sort of limbo situation. And I'm fascinated to see how it all ends up, both in the long term and, of course, in the interim as well.
And they have been winning without him. They're 5-2 as we speak. So things are looking pretty good for the most part. They had a very good offseason, adding a couple of guys who've been off to a great start here this year, George Niang and Andre Drummond. You wrote a story about him a few weeks back. Are you surprised at how well Niang and Drummond have fit in right away?
Well, those are two veterans that sort of know their roles. And, Andre Drummond's in an interesting situation because he was, formerly an all-star, a rebounding leader, a max player, and is sort of now getting a chance to revitalize his career with Doc Rivers, who he's known for a decade, which is in that story that you just mentioned. And George Niang, I mean, he comes from a team in Utah where he shot amazingly from 3-point range and then sort of carried that over. And here he's even gotten a chance to kind of play a little bit more with the ball in his hands as far as driving. And, he's being asked to play some small ball 5 in some certain situations. But when you kind of think of those two, it's like those are two veterans who filled needs that this team needed. This team needed a backup power forward. We saw that pop up in the playoffs last year whenever Tobias Harris had to, leave the game just to get some rest. And then, obviously I think Andre Drummond is an upgrade over Dwight Howard at that backup center spot. So no, those were, kind of two free agency acquisitions that aren't going to pop off the page when those flurries of signings and trades and everything is happening on what's normally July 1st. I think it was August 3rd this year. But, just like two pieces that are helping this team, a team that was already first in the Eastern Conference. And so you're going to kind of be making those moves along the margins unless you make some sort of blockbuster trade with Ben Simmons involved. But yeah, those two guys have played well and particularly played great in that win against Portland on Monday night.
All right, Joel Embiid. He's been listed as questionable just about every game this year. He sat out Monday night, and they won without him. It was deemed rest. He looks great some nights. He looks like he's struggling a bit some of the other time with that knee. Is this going to be the case all season with Joel, do you think?
I mean, it's kind of been the case a lot of his career, if you want to be frank about it. And so, not an ideal start for him where, he got so much praise during the preseason that he had come in, obviously, in the best shape of his life and that he was ready to build off an MVP caliber season, and people saying, he probably would have won MVP if he had stayed healthy for more of the season, but he gets his knee knocked in that first game of the season, and you could tell that it was bothering him. I mean, you see him at shoot around or after games, and it's just like wrapped in this giant ace bandage with, I don't know if it's ice or a heating pad or something is trying to, keep it healing. But the Sixers emphasized to us that he missed Monday's game because of rest and not because of the knee per se, that they're in the midst of a stretch of playing 6 games in 9 nights, including 2 back-to-backs, their first 2 back-to-backs of the season, so that this was already planned. And it was almost, I feel like, so planned that then when Tobias Harris unexpectedly goes out and enters health and safety protocols, it created such a unique situation in that Blazers game. But it was like, a scheduled, planned off day. But we'll see how he looks now, as we go forward throughout this next, week to 10 days, because there just are a lot of games now crammed into this time period.
Hey, a couple other guys we should mention, both off to real good starts. Seth Curry, who's been shooting great, and Tyrese Maxey, who's just so much fun to watch. You agree? You like watching these two guys?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Seth Curry, he's been shooting the lights out of the ball. And again, is a guy that needed to step up with Tobias Harris out, with Joel Embiid out. And he had that game in Oklahoma City about a week ago where I think he scored like 21 points in the first quarter, something bonkers like that. And then, Tyrese Maxey, it's definitely a work in progress for him as far as learning how to be an NBA starting point guard and kind of striking that balance between attacking and looking for his own shot and getting to the basket, with also distributing and running the offense and moving the ball. But he's a super, super hard worker and just has such a fantastic, effusive personality that people just love being around and love gravitating towards. So I think that bodes well for him too, because people want to help him develop, and he's really good at taking criticism and not getting down on himself, just being able to kind of take it in and still be a positive presence. So again, we'll see if that's the long-term solution as far as Maxey playing that point guard spot, or if still maybe a move is made to bring in someone with a little more experience, or, kind of a straight up lead guard. But yeah, both those guys in the backcourt have certainly had their moments in the early season, particularly Curry with the way he's been shooting the ball.
Gina, I would normally ask you for a prediction for how things are going to go, into the spring, the playoffs, but given Simmons' uncertainty, I won't even do that.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
But I didn't tell you about this. We normally put first-time guests in the hot seat to wrap up our initial interview. So It's a little thing we do, we call Fast Five. 5 simple questions, I hope, 5 brief answers. So you want to give it a shot?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Number one, Gina Mizell. Other than covering the Sixers, of course, what's the most fun thing that you've done since moving to the Philly area a couple of months back?
I've gone and seen, I think now 8 musicals, either in New York or in Philly, and going to DC to see my first show here. It'll already have happened by the time this airs, but yes, going to see musicals, excited. Theaters are open again. That's my other weird thing that I do.
Well, I know that because on your Twitter profile, it indicates you're a fan of musicals. Other than Hamilton, what is your all-time favorite musical?
Rent, and that's what I'm seeing in DC on Tuesday.
Ah, nice. I like Jersey Boys. I liked Once, and of course,
Once is great. Yes,
yeah.
Always, yes, very good choices.
Number 3, we often joke with your colleague Keith Pompey about rooting for the New York Football Giants. Gina, fess up. What non-Philly sports teams do you root for?
Yeah, well, I'm from Phoenix, so I'm a huge Arizona State football fan. My family grew up with season tickets. So, yeah, that's definitely college football is probably the sport that I watch the most as a fan, as not a work person. So, yeah, ASU, go Devils. Those are my guys right there.
All right. Number 4, as a beat reporter, you, of course, travel a lot. What's the worst thing about traveling?
The early morning alarms, when you have to set an alarm for 3:00 in the morning, not enjoyable, especially after a long night of games. So team no sleep is one of my favorite hashtags on Twitter because of those early flights.
I see. Number 5, great sports movies. In no particular order, what are the first 3 that come to mind when I say great sports movie?
Okay. Remember the Titans is the first one that comes to mind for me. League of Their Own comes to mind. And Rudy, I guess that's kind of staying on the college football brain. But yeah, Remember the Titans is my favorite sports movie for sure of all time.
Not a fan of Rudy, but I'll let you slide on that one.
Okay, fair.
I have one more bonus question. Since we just had Halloween, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite Halloween candy?
Ooh, anything with caramel, I would say. So like Twix or Milky Ways. But I also like Starburst, and I will confess, because I feel like this is a very controversial topic, but I'm one of those people who actually likes candy corn. I know most people don't, but I do like candy corn. So if you have any left over, I will take it off your hands. So
no candy corn, but I do like Twix and Reese's peanut butter cups, and a very underrated one, Mr. Goodbar. Love the Mr. Goodbar.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Good.
Inquirer.com's Gina Mizell. Gina, great to have you visit Philly Pressbox Radio. Hopefully you'll come back and do it again sometime.
Anytime. I appreciate it, Chet. Have a good one.